Well, that is very fitting for today's actual workshop on the grid series because we're going to be cooking up a lot of stuff today. Cooking up a lot of stuff. But we don't have a chef here today. We have a doctor in the house. I'm excited to introduce to you in a moment. But before I introduce before I introduce the doctor to you, just for those who may not be as familiar with us as an organization. We're Grid 110. This is the On the Grid series where we are doing about 12 consecutive weeks of 1 hour lunch and learn type of workshops and presentations, really to help you to level up your entrepreneurial game, take your business to the next level. We've had several already over the past few weeks. And we do this really because we care about businesses in Los Angeles. We're a nonprofit organization. We're an economic and community development nonprofit based here in Los Angeles, really focusing on closing the entrepreneurial gap, providing access to resources and entrepreneurial education for those who need it most and typically don't have access. So we're excited. This is we're celebrating 10 years as an organization, and we're doing a lot of programming, and this is one of the ones I'm super excited about. But I'm going to shut up because you're not here to hear from me. Today's particular workshop is data-driven success on a shoestring, affordable analytics for startups. We have with us the one and the only Dr. Alfonso Berumen. He is an LA native, a full-time practitioner, faculty of decision scientist at the business school at Pepperdine University, the Graziadio Business School at Pepperdine University. Dr. Berumen teaches various quantitative and business data analytics courses across a doctoral program and master programs at Pepperdine. Listen, you have a very smart person here. You didn't have to go get a master's degree, and you're not in a doctoral program, but we're bringing some of that knowledge to you today. He has over 15 years of consulting experience. He's provided data-driven economic, statistical, and analytical support to law firms, Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, nonprofit organizations, and private companies operating in a wide range of industries. And he's here giving you 1 hour of his time for absolutely free. I hope you're ready to level up your game in the data analytics space. Dr. Alfonso Berumen, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm going to share my screen. That's quite the intro. I can't really match that, but hopefully some of this will get you excited or as excited as that. So I have all these files shared. We have a smaller group. I guess the attrition rate is high this week, but hopefully we all go viral on YouTube, right? I'm expecting this will be recorded and shared online. So I already did my intro, so I'm not going to sort of reintroduce myself, but Alfonso is fine. You don't have to use any other sort of before name or after name. Alfonso is fine if you want to refer to me as Alfonso. Yeah. So why am I here? In 2008 I started at an econ and stats consulting firm. I was actually there for 10 years, but as you know, the term data scientists became popularized with this HBO article in 2012. You can see that statement there, quote there. More than anything, what data scientists do is make discoveries while swimming in data. It's their preferred method of navigating the world around them. And that really resonates with me. I think even my partner sometimes gets frustrated when I say that certain decisions are binary, right? So I always have sort of a data mindset, and that applies to a lot of parts of my life. So in 2018, I made the risky decision to go back to graduate school one last time. So Pepperdine had started a doctoral program, so I was part of the first class. And I also did some entrepreneurship. I had a one-person shop. And in terms of graduate school, I actually studied the use of data analytics and its impact on business performance within SMBs. And I just checked recently, I was reminded recently that of all the different dissertations and theses that have been completed at Pepperdine, it's actually in the top 10 most popular theses that is available out of all the doctoral programs at Pepperdine University, including non-business. Entrepreneurship, did a number of different projects while I was in school, and in fact, one was VC related. So I did build a data pipeline for a VC for one of their companies in their portfolio. But why am I providing this presentation? Well, in fact, I had to bootstrap all of that at the firm I was at. The software that I was using, or the statistical software to do all this work, was actually probably running around $10,000 per desktop. In other words, for each person that was using the software, it's around $10,000 for that annual fee. Well, open source started becoming popular, and so Python and R, I actually basically used all free resources to do those projects, including the pipeline that I built out. All of the software that I used was actually open source and free. So if you sort of fast forward to now, those open source tools are actually the most popular in the market. So the Python, SQL R, those are free tools that are actually very popular and used in industry. So that's sort of the topic today, is the expense, and what we'll focus on and talk about a little bit later. But this is what we're going to outline. So look at adoptions and trends, importance of analytics, building a data-driven mindset. Tools and resources, we'll go through a hypothetical case study and a little bit more. But the goal is to just provide insights on what's out there, whether you're early stage or mature, with resources that help enable data-driven decision-making. So as to, whoops, got too far. There you go, a little lag. Yeah, so why do you matter? I actually did focus on SMBs as I was studying in graduate school, and I thought there was really like an underserved group or gap, let's say. So in fact, smaller businesses are 99% of all firms, and they actually make up almost 44% of GDP. In fact, there's been an increase in business applications. So post-pandemic, the applications actually rose by 25%, or about 25% in 2020. And they actually remain high, with over 5.2 million submitted in 2024 alone, right? And you see that trend there basically from the pandemic upwards through 2025. So we matter a lot, right? Smaller businesses matter a lot. And there's actually still a big gap between adoption. So larger companies, well adopted, smaller companies, in a recent study showing that the concern is really financial, right? Or the costs, and also the expertise, right? So this is hopefully some of the gap that we can kind of highlight and fill as we go through some of the resources that I'll share during this lunch session. So we know that there's different stages, right? There's sort of pre-seed, seed, Series A, then Series B and beyond, then maturity and growth, or so maturity and expansion, and then also exit or sustained operation, right? So there's different stages. So I try to be mindful of the fact that maybe we need to use different data sources, different tools, depending on what stage we're in, right? But one thing you'll actually notice is that what I'm sort of promoting is that for pre-seed or early stage, there are actually a lot of free resources that you're not going to break the bank on, that you can leverage as you start to grow, or as you start to expand. So if we take a step back, right, I have to think about the academic or theoretical side. There actually is this idea, right, of data-driven decision-making, right? So you've probably heard this term used a number of times, and you're probably wondering like, okay, well, what does it actually mean? Well, this research group actually in 2011 did study this with publicly traded firms, which is in fact a lot easier to do. And they actually did show that there's basically a 5 to 6% positive impact in performance, right? So there's companies that were more heavily data driven with respect to their decision making, did actually see a positive gain or sort of positive relationship between that and their performance. So we expect the same, very similar with smaller firms as well. But I did want to take time to do a quick quiz. So in fact, this construct, data-driven decision making, was actually based on 3 separate questions. So the first one is the typical basis for a decision on the creation of new product or service. So I'm sure that actually applies to many of you. Maybe you're actually early stage, you're thinking about, okay, well, I'm going to maybe create this new product offering or extend a new service. And then the second one, we depend on data to support our decision making. And the third one is we have the data we need to make decisions, right? So we're going to just do a quick quiz. The survey link, there's a QR code, but actually, in fact, you have a copy of the slides, and I can paste that in as well. Hopefully, oh, one pasted in, I believe. So let me, I'll actually just share that as well with you. Let me actually exit full screen or exit slideshow. And I'll go ahead and just, oh, Juan, did that work?
Yep, I dropped the link in there for you.
Cool. Yeah, so if you could just quickly fill out that survey, and we'll take a look at our results in a bit.
Hi, sorry to interrupt. I'm on my phone and I just went to the survey and the first question, it seems to have an error. It's asking you to respond to the Likert scale, but there's no battery of questions. It's like it's just asking us how much we use something, but it doesn't say what. And I don't know if it's an issue with just my phone or what. I don't know if anyone else is having that issue.
It might be a mobile thing.
Okay.
So I apologize for that on the liability.
Dr.
No problem.
Dr. Tope, it may also, if you have an Android, it may, I think it may have something to do with that as well.
I do have an Android. How dare you? We are so sick of being left out.
We're using data. We're using data, Alfonso. I use the data.
Okay, thanks.
It's okay. I give my partner the same hard time. Can't trust screen text, right? You can maybe roll one more minute here, just see if any other responses come in. So we got that silent period out of the way, and let's actually see our results. So I'm going to take us directly to a dashboard here so we can see our responses. And let me actually remove. So this is basically where we're at. So we had 11 folks fill out our survey, and with respect to the basis for a decision on creating a new product or service, our average is about 2.5, right? So the max is 5, 2.7 for that next question on supporting our decision making, and then 2.6 on having the data we need to make decisions. So we're basically in the middle, right? It's on that 1 to 5 scale. And if you sum all those up for each individual respondent, we're actually about an 8, right? So we're actually about an 8, and the max is 15. So many of us are actually very much in the middle, and we want to be further out towards 15, right? And in each of those individual questions, we want to be out towards that 5 scale. So hopefully we can fill in some gaps, but at least gives you some perspective. And this is actually where that term came from as this initial study, and it's actually used by the census now as well. So I put a link in there as well to understand to what extent companies are using data-driven decision making, right? So it's actually well respected, sort of well used scale, relied upon scale. So let's think about some concepts now and dig a little bit deeper in terms of what we mean by data-driven decision making and how to execute that. So let me actually go again to my view and go back to slideshow. There you go. All right. So yeah, thanks for participating in that. So again, we're in the middle, but how do we actually go forward and execute this? I mean, at a high level, basically what we need is data, right? So we might use different tools and different sources like a database, spreadsheet, could be a social media platform. We need a way to store that. So we might store that using a cloud-based platform. We need tools to analyze that. So we might use, for example, one of the coding languages I just mentioned with Python to analyze that. And also we might need a visualization tool as well, or visualization layer. So your BI tools would fall into that, but also communication tools as well, right? So your Slack or Teams would facilitate communication around your different projects or different initiatives. And there's actually very different types. So I think there's a slight lag. There you go. Yeah, there's actually very different types of analytics. And what it's actually going to tie to is different business questions. So with respect to the first one, that would likely fall under BI or business intelligence, your business question might answer, what's your overall profit? What's your overall revenue cost for a specific time period? Your diagnostic would help you answer why it happened, right? So you have revenue and cost, maybe by categories, maybe it's by product or service, location or time. Then you get into predictive, which is really your forecasting. So you might estimate what your profit is likely to be in the future, maybe based on different variables or different factors. And then finally, prescriptive, that's where you're getting a prescribed answer on what you should be doing to maybe optimize cost or optimize profitability. So the latter two actually are more advanced techniques, but the point I'm trying to make here is that based on your business question, you could have very different analytics and different mathematical techniques and different summaries that you would want to employ to be able to answer those questions. And it can be very daunting at first, but when you actually tie them to specific tools, there's actually a lot of really good resources that help you address some of these business questions using these different analytical techniques. So I actually have a detailed guide here that I threw a link. So there's a link into this slide deck, and you actually see a sheet or a Google sheet that has a list of various tools that help you answer those descriptive questions. many of which are free. And I'll actually show a quick demo on some free tools in a bit. Also, it kind of shows you that there are possible tools that might be embedded in some of the software that you already use. So for example, if you use Zoho, there's actually a capability to do analytics within that, right? So it might be just a sort of extension for some of your software that you already subscribe to that you may want to look into as well. But this is sort of the breakdown. So tying some of these free tools or low-cost tools to some of the analytics that you might be able to employ. And again, we tie that to those specific business questions. So what happened? Why did it happen? What's going to happen in the future? And what should I do exactly? So if we kind of take a more qualitative view of this, we should really have clear goals, focused data, and that's hopefully going to lead to better value. When you think about value, right, we often tie that or think about the KPIs and metrics that we care about. So in the first on the grid session, the speaker actually talked about reporting. So once you actually get an investor, what type of reporting you would need to do. I highly recommend that session. That speaker was spot on a lot of the different metrics, and he talks about KPIs and the North Star metric as well. But some of the most valuable insights we can get when we're thinking about employing analytics or using analytics is when we're clear on what we're trying to solve or improve. So if we can isolate that, we're hopefully going to get more value out of some of the insights that we develop using data and analytics. Additionally, centricity on where you need to build, right? So oftentimes it would be helpful to think about certain process areas and try to isolate those. Is it customer? Is it on the sales and marketing side? Is it on the supplier side or product and service enhancement? Also, is it in operations or production as well? And with all that, it should be much easier, or would lead to a much easier way of measuring the value of different data analytics initiatives that you actually employ or use. So slide like. So I have this framework that I created that may help you, but I often advise sort of folks that are newer to data analytics to start with a project mindset, right? So one-off projects or isolated projects. So don't just start fully adopt a certain software, subscribe to a certain data, third-party data, unless you know that you're going to get value out of it. So kind of proof of concept first, and then you build from there. But I have this conject framework where we're starting with conject and hypothesize what KPI or outcome are we trying to explain or improve. Obtain data. So what data do we have? What data do we need to collect? Making sure that aligns with your business questions or business problems. There's always going to be some outcome or dependent variable that you're trying to reason about or understand, right? It could be profitability, it could be sales, it could be your customer retention. And there's going to be some factors that help explain that, right? So it might be usage patterns for customer retention, might be demographics, it might be the membership tier. But there's always going to be some outcome that you care about, right? And that's going to tie to that KPI or that metric that you're trying to reason about or really explore. Then you justify the filters, right? So it might be that you might need to narrow the data to a relevant slice. It might be by time period. In the retention situation, it might be cohort or area. Then you choose the right analyses. So all the different analyses I just discussed, right? From descriptive to prescriptive. That again is going to tie to your business question or business problem. And so you do that test to test that, and then you conclude and interpret, right? So you want to interpret those results, and it could be an iterative process, right? You may actually have to go back to the conject stage because what you thought would be the case or what you thought was going to be a relationship or pattern that you hope to see based on what you conjected isn't actually the case. Then finally, you turn those insights into action or take action. So you really implement those solutions and then track the value of that action or that activity that resulted from your analytics project. So that's sort of a idea to, or sort of a framework or idea on how to go from informed hunch to actually the action and the strategic actions that you would take to use those results and actually make various decisions. So it is very daunting because many of this is, with employee analytics, you do need software. But in fact, there's actually a lot of free resources that help you kind of upskill around specific tools or specific software. So all these open source, you see a lot of mention of the open source, like the R Python says that's also on my list there. But even sources like video, right? YouTube, LinkedIn Learning. If you have access to a library or a university email address, that also is free. If you already subscribe to LinkedIn Premium, you have access to that whole library of videos. Just make sure you don't make fun of me. I did participate in one a while back. It's called Day in the Life of a Data Scientist. So don't make fun of me if you actually watch that and go through that course. It was a fun process, but try to be light on the humor side. There's also various books that are free, various documents that are available. So there's finally generative AI. So this is actually very big, and it's actually very disruptive. I think several years I was sitting in a classroom and I had a student come up to me with his laptop and he said, "Hey, look at this. I just completed this code through a prompt." And I kind of looked at him and I was like, "Oh no, it's here. I'm in trouble in terms of how I educate our future business leaders and business professionals. We really need to adjust and change, but more so the ease of use and the accuracy, I was blown away from. And it's only gotten better in the last couple of years, and it's very widely adopted at this point. So you're probably thinking for some of these open source tools like code, like Python, it's actually very easy to write code, produce code, correct code, get feedback on code, also to have code explained as well. And so you can kind of see here, if you had a web traffic data set, you could throw that in and get perfect code on producing this chart, right? So it's a sort of a time series chart that's being shown here, and also interpretation as well, right? So this visualization shows increasing traffic with periodic spikes. However, there's a drop in traffic on weekends, and you could see those dips in that chart. But one piece of advice I always give to anyone who's considering generative AI, especially some of the newer ones, that you want to be careful about privacy. So if you upload anything, you have to be comfortable with the fact that that could be shown or shared with someone else. So that's a big concern. So just be mindful of that as you use these different tools. And it is, though, extremely, extremely useful. And, sort of I guess I'll just relate this to some of the events that we're seeing in current times, is that a lot of tech companies have actually reduced their workforce. It's because it actually takes less people to do what was once a very highly skilled activity, right? So it is very disruptive, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen. I'll share a little bit more about some of my hypotheses on what is going to happen next. So finally, it's totally okay to lean on others. In fact, as part of my affiliation with Pepperdine, and actually as a result of the story that I just told around the shift in technology and the sort of increase in the capabilities of that technology, is experiential learning. So a lot of universities do capstone projects. I run the capstone projects for the MS in Business Analytics program at Pepperdine. So I'm, I guess, a little partial. I put my link in there, but you can reach out maybe to your alma mater or other universities that are doing these types of initiatives for their students to get really good experience, right? Real world experience. I think that's where higher education is going to need to shift for students to be prepared for post-graduation. Handshake, internships, student clubs you can reach out to as well. There's other resources there that listed. Also hackathons or datathons. Those are highly fruitful as well, right? So you have an isolated prompt that you provide to professionals, young professionals or students, and they maybe have a period of time to kind of challenge or sort of work through that challenge. Those are highly useful as well. And there's a couple other, there's also web-based, right? So Kaggle does web-based. So a number of actually big companies have done competitions and have used solutions from those competitions as part of their firm operations. Finally, there's also volunteer platforms. I don't think this program is still around, but when I was sort of earlier professional, I actually volunteered for the city of LA as a data angel, or they call them data angels, and I presented to like a big group on what we found on housing prices, right? So that's still a big concern, is that the availability of affordable housing, and this was years ago, but they have a program, or had a program, in which they were using volunteers to do that. And finally, I'm going to shift to a case study. And the case study, so this is a hypothetical company. It's called Remote Roast. So Remote Roast is a startup cafe. They're targeting remote workers. They want to open its first location in Los Angeles, and they're considering various neighborhoods. They don't have the budget for a consulting firm or real estate data subscriptions. They actually turn to free census data. So the plan here is they actually identified 4 important variables they're going to use, or several important variables they're going to use, including income, age, and % remote workers in the area. And what you can actually do is you can actually develop, so this is actually scoring, what it's called, is a composite score, right? It's a composite score. So obviously these are several different dimensions, and we can kind of combine those into a single dimension to consider all of these different factors. So what they want to do is highlight neighborhoods based on composite score, and they'll actually select the neighborhood that has the highest composite score on where to go next. So census data, completely free. ACS, or the American Community Survey, there is various levels of geography. One, in fact, is actually zip code, right? So you can actually pull zip code data completely free. And the process that I went through is I used a free resource, Google Colab, to pull the data using an API. I shared that code. All you have to do is actually change the zip codes or enter in your own zip codes if you want to pull this or replicate this. But you can actually pull all this data manually as well. So I put a link on the next slide to be able to pull that data manually. And you could see that we can export to a CSV, put it in Google Sheets. Again, Google Sheets, free. And then Looker is used to be Google Data Studio. Looker is also free. So we're just going to create a quick map, or I'm going to show you a quick map based on that composite score. So completely free tools. And here's my, well, I think it's pretty. You may disagree, but you can see my map here. And I'm going to pull up this report. And in fact, what it is just a dashboard, right? So it's just a dashboard that shows our results. So these are the different neighborhoods that they considered. And you can see based on that composite index that in fact, if I considered every year of data, I can actually sort there, right? I can actually just click over and sort here. Mid-Wilshire would actually be the winner, right? But in fact, Sawtell is a close second. But you can see here that we have this composite score. It's actually a function of these different independent factors, right? Is the median income, percent age, 25 to 39, bachelor's or higher percent, and also work from home percent as well. So in fact, if I don't hover over that, 9.3% on average across this time period of the individuals in Mid-Wilshire actually work from home. So it's pretty cool. You can see, in fact, I can even scroll in there, and you see that hotspot there, right? So Mid-Wilshire is my ideal location. Obviously, there's other considerations, right? There's rent costs. Do they actually want to be in that area? But this sort of gives at least an informational or data-driven approach. And then obviously there's other considerations that you would consider from a business perspective, such as, rental cost, and is there, potential available labor to work at remote roast. So there's a number of other considerations as well. There's actually the city actually collects foot traffic data as well. It's also free. So feel free to check that out. That would be maybe another layer of information that they would add to this analysis. But at least we have a suggested winner, or at least based on those four variables, you see the suggested winner would be Mid-Wilshire for them. So I did mention AI and it being extremely disruptive. But for those of you that were thinking about code or saw the references to code, and it still feels really daunting, I'm actually semi-agree with the statement that it could be in the next 12 months, we may be in a world where AI is writing essentially all of the code. And we actually see that we actually don't need a very sort of advanced skill set to even use some of the business intelligence tools. In fact, there's a lot of capabilities that are now built into major BI tools in which it's basically speak to data analytics. So in other words, it's prompt based, right? So I can say, hey, can you give me sales by region, right? And as opposed to you having to go in and write code or click in and click that, it'll actually produce a report that shows you sales by region. So the last bit here, and before I go to my last point on thinking harder, is that I think there's going to be a big shift towards the actual data and data quality. So whether that resource is free, paid, so on, really the shift or attention is not necessarily going to be on the more technical, or what used to be more technical, but also on more so on the data quality that we feed into these different software systems that are embedded with AI. But the last, and this is hopefully positive for a lot of us that are maybe starting a new business or have been in business for a while and coming up with different ideas, keep coming up with different ideas and keep being creative. In fact, the World Economic Forum report, Future Jobs report, actually points out that abilities such as creativity, critical thinking, and resilience are actually the top among the top 10 top 10 skills employers will need, right? So top 10 skills that are going to be needed. And that is driven by that rapid pace of technological and societal change. There's also sort of a recommendation there, get a discipline degree rather than computer or software degree. Because again, there's a expectation that a lot of this, what used to be a very highly skilled field, a lot of it's going to be automated as well, which is somewhat scary, right? So my final tips, I do want to leave some time for questions, but don't overpay early. So free sources are actually very powerful at pre-seed and seed stages. You'll get a lot of good insights from these free sources. Use your own data first. So internal data can often be the most revealing. Also, upgrade strategically, right? So use pay data or subscribe to pay data where it does directly improve upon your decisions. You expect it to improve upon your decisions. So there might be improvements within optimization, pricing, market expansion as well. So obviously we know that many of our data that we generate is actually coming from systems. And it could be your HubSpot CRM, it could be your NetSuite financial data, could be maybe your Monday project management data. But don't adopt or pay to start collecting that data unless you're actually ready from a business process perspective and management perspective. I guess really short story, I did consulting for a rental business, and they really needed and wanted a rental software. But what you actually also need in that situation is you actually need to have an inventory of what you're going to rent. So they had not barcoded anything. They had not inventoried everything that they were then renting out. So that basically put a stop to all that, right? So rental software could have given them a lot of insights on their pricing model, their rental frequencies, and so on, which I would love to see. But from a business process perspective, they weren't quite ready for that step. And then final tip is for earlier stage, try to maintain a simple data log, right? So try to record what you use, how it informed you, and also, if possible, tie its value to different process areas, right? So I mentioned process areas like marketing, sales, customer, and you can do that by recording when it was adopted, the usage or amount of usage, and also the estimated impact on those KPIs or those more objective outcomes. So finally, other resources might be local. I do want to caveat though this in that with the current administration, it's going to be curious to see how things are funded, right? So there might be some pullback in funding. In fact, there already is. They did have a reduction in force for the SBA, I believe, for 40% of their workforce, right? So there's going to be potentially less resources. So we'll see how that goes going forward. But some of the local resources might be helpful as well in sort of seminars like this, but also with respect to financial. So I mentioned earlier in that study, they were talking about insufficient expertise and financial concerns. Financial, follow Grid on social media, Grid 110 on social media. I follow them, and they have a lot of awesome grants that they share and other funding that they share. So if you're worried about the investment in data analytics, hopefully the money and the funding is out there. And I mentioned some of the training that's freely available as well. And that's what I have. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. And I'll go ahead and open it up for questions. And I'm very open to chatting with you about your business individually, and having an outside discussion. I've really enjoyed learning more, and then also again, if you're interested in maybe a student project, I'd be happy to help you source that as well through Pepperdine. I see a lot of chat messages, but I haven't looked at a single one, so happy to answer any questions or comments.